I am taking this another case on the doctrine of ultra-vires, and the name of this case is In Re John Beauforte London Limited, 1953 1 CH 131. The screen I have shared. See the facts of this case, that there was a company, and this company was authorized by its memorandum of the association to carry on the business of the costume, gown maker, corset maker, hosiery, that gloves, lace maker, etc. So in that memorandum, it was written to do all these household items type of the business the company can do. But the company has decided to undertake the business of making the veneered panel, वो जो प्लाइट होती है ना veneered panel. The company decided to do that business, and for that company has to erect a factory. Okay, so company started erection of the factory in the 1949, and for that erection of the factory, company need some material like cement, bricks, etc. So the company made a contract with the Grainer Smith and Company, that the respondent in this earlier it was respondent in the case, Grainer Smith and Company Builders Limited. And the Grainer Smith and Company Limited supply the some material that was required for erection of the company at some price. And then on a particular date, September 20, 1950, for the money, this builder company, Grainer and Smith, they asked the money. So if then it was not paid, so on September 20, 1950, they sued to the company that you have to pay the money, whatever the material we have supplied. And the In Re Beauforte company then through the consent, they said okay, hum paisa denge, and consent decree was made that the company has to pay 2,000 pound in the installment, and in default of that, builder can sign the judgment. Okay, now after that the question arose. I'm just making sorts the fact. And when this payment was also not made as per the consent order, so the question arose there, the liability of this In Re John company. And so they later on argued that the company is not responsible, because this act of erection of the building for the veneered panel was outside the object clause. So it was the doctrine of the ultra-vires which applied, and so the company is not responsible. Okay, because company is responsible for only those acts that are in the object clause or fairly incidental. If the company has to erect the factory for making the hosieries, lace making, crochet's, gown making, for that purposes, anything ancillary, fairly incidental they want to do, for that, it would be considered to be allowed. But for the veneered panel, that is nowhere connected with the object of the company, and for that, if they are erecting, so that is auxiliary to the this particular veneered panel, and so it is also ultra-vires. Okay, and there is no dispute about it. The main contention was that the company, when it was first sued by the builders company, the respondent company In Re John Beauforte has agreed to pay. So consent decree was there, and it has agreed to pay. And so whether this judgment will not play the role of rectifying the act of the company. So the main discussion was on this thing, and on that the court has decided, and this is the settled law also, that if there is any act that is ultra-vires, the resolution by the all shareholder or any act of the company will not make that act as, or cannot ratify it, cannot make it then the intra-virus. So whatever the act, if it is ultra-virus, if the company through the consent order or through any shareholder resolutions whatsoever cannot make it intra-virus, it will still remain the ultra-virus. Okay, and so with this, it was now settled that suppose the director had exceeded the power. In that case, through the resolutions of the shareholder, it is possible that act can be rectified. But what the director are doing is beyond the power of the company, then it cannot be rectified. Like in the case of the minor, if you remember, Mauri Bibi versus Dharmdas Ghosh case under the Indian Contract Act 1872, that cannot be rectified. Okay, so this case is all about it. Now come to the case that screen I have shared here. This first clause is about saying that the company was authorized by the memorandum of the business to doing this particular thing. Then this clause that the company John Beauforte was in compulsory liquidation according to the memorandum. There on the first page where this case started, on the last para is about the memorandum of the company. So clause A, to carry on the business of costumer, gown making. So whatever I have explained for that, all the item like gown, robe, dress, tailoring, silk mercer, supplier of clothing, lingerie, trimming, corset maker, furies, general drapers, feather, gloss, lace making, etc. And then in the clause B, to carry on any other trade or business whatsoever which can be in the opinion of the board of director be advantageously carried on by the company in connection with or ancillary to any of the above business or in the general business of the company. So this is open clause giving the power to the director, that director can do any business if they think it is advantageous for the company to do, and to do all such other things that are incidental or the conducive to the above object or any of them. Then to the here somewhere here to this, you will find that there was the compromise, that the earlier, I am making it blue, that the earlier consent judgment was in nature of the compromise which the liquidator rejected. Okay, and then you will find the judgment by Justice Roxborough. So here from this line, just give me a few minutes so that I can make it clear. Yes, in V. Now with the first difficulty. Yes, from this now with the first difficulty, there is the reason for the decision of this particular case. I am reading it, that now you can also read along with me. That Justice Roxborough is observing that now the first difficulty to decide whether the Privy Council adopted the reasoning of the Chancellor with only one reservation, namely that ultra-vires or intra-vires is a point substantially in the dispute. That point may be validly compromised, or whether the board declined to decide the issue between the Chancellor and the Supreme Court in general in terms which it was raised, and confined themselves to holding that where both the parties are equally insisting on the contract in the circumstances which existed in that case, a consent order cannot be valid. I think that the first alternative is to preferred, it is quite clear. They said that the company cannot do what is beyond its legal power by simply going into the court. So here, the clearly, this para that I'm reading, you can mark it also. That is, the ratio of this case, that even after the consent decree, why the court is refusing to hold that that act would be, the intra-vires, or what is the effect of, the compromise or any rectification by the shareholders or the company to the act that is ultra-vires. So it's saying that, I think the first alternative is to refer it quite clear. They said that a company cannot do what is beyond its legal power by simply going into the court and consenting. The proposition seems to me to the negative on the basis of the judgment of the Supreme Court that consent judgment raise an estoppel, and into involve the adoption of the reasoning of the Chancellor, with one reservation to which I have referred. If that is be so, the next question is to draw the line which bound the principle and the reservation. It seems to me that any compromise made upon the footing that the contract is intra-vires, and any judgment suffered in an action in which the defense of ultra-vires is not raised, can be set aside, because applying the principle stated, it is ultra-vires the company to proceed upon the footing that the contract is intra-vires, whether by negotiating a compromise on that footing or by submitting to the judgment without delivering an appropriate defense. Accordingly, I interpret the judgment of Privy Council as meaning that in case of the ultra-vires contract, no judgment founded upon it is inviolable unless it embodies a decision of the fact upon the issue of ultra-vires or a compromise of that issue, and I adopt reasoning which appears to lead me that conclusion. Okay, and then in view of the conclusion, I need not further explore the argument which I have heard upon the question whether these judgment could be reopened in accordance with the principle applied in bankruptcy and liquidation to the judgment generally, but the rejection of the proof must be accompanied by a reservation of tracing the right which may arise, for the formulation of which I invite assistance of the council. It was further agreed that as the three applicant has been selected to represent other creditor quasi representative capacity, they should be entitled to their cost as between the party and the parties applicant, applications dismissed. So the court here has clearly said that any act that is ultra-vires or anything, the company by compromising cannot make the act as intra-vires. Okay, so that type of the things that suppose in the first hearing when it was before the court is no, the other party or from the company side there was no defense, but it accepted it that they will make the liability. It does not mean that this act is making those act as the the intra-vires. So whatever be done by the company as a compromise or as a rectification will not ratifying the ultra-vires act of the company. Okay, so this is the first judgment. On the this point, or you can say on the doctrine of ultra-vires, next judgment we have to discuss is Bell House Limited versus City Wall Properties Limited. Before that, if you have any question, you can ask me on this in re Beauforte judgment. Any question? Okay, no worry. Maybe I will take after the class, after this, this discussion on this case also. Here, there was this company and Bell House Limited and the City Wall Properties Limited. So, the action was brought by the plaintiff company Bell House against the defendant City Wall to recover the commission for procuration of fee under the agreement. Here the Bell House Limited company has the object clause and that object clause is like, the earlier this case in the Beauforte case, that different sub clauses, then a general clauses, that power is given to the uh, you know doing any business that director feel advantageous. So this is the another way of drafting the object clause. And so the main business was the acquisition of the vacant site and erection of the house there. So the main business of the company was acquiring the vacant site and then erecting the building and selling it. But along with that, like earlier we have read, there was one subclause in the object clause that gives the power to the director that they can also carry on any trade or business whatsoever which can, in opinion of board of director, be advantageously carried on by the company in connection with or ancillary to any of the above business or the general business of the company. And so what is the true interpretation of this to doing any business or giving the power to the director to do any business of whatsoever that is advantageously but have the connection or ancillary to the main object, similar thing. Okay, here the question arose when this company has made a contract to finance for property development to the defendant company, that is the City Wall Properties Limited. So to the City Wall Properties Limited, they have provided the finance service. The main purpose, the main object of the Bell House Limited is for acquiring the vacant land and then erecting the building and selling it. Okay, but then there is one subclause that giving the power to the directors for doing or for carry on any business or the trade that they feel advantageous, तो प्रॉफिटेबल होगा कंपनी के लिए, and in connection or ancillary to the any of the journal clauses, any of the main clause. Then this company entered into a contract with the City Wall Properties Limited to finance, the similar thing like we discussed under the Asprey Railway Carriage and Iron Company. And here when they ask for the money for the services they have provided, that you can hear in the first line, that the action was brought by the plaintiff company Bell House against the defendant City Wall Limited for recovering the commission for procuration of the 20,000 under an agreement. Then it was contended from the on behalf of the City Wall Properties Limited that it is ultra-virus, and so the effect of the ultra-virus contract or the contract where that is beyond the object clause, then the doctrine of ultra-virus will apply and that contract would be void. Okay, and so the company is not liable to claim the money, and City Wall Properties Limited is not liable to pay the money. And here the main argument was happened that what is the true scope of this clause, that to carry on any trade or business whatsoever which is in opinion of the director be advantageously carried on by the company in connection with or ancillary to any of the above business or in or general business of the company. And for that the discussion happened and finally it was held that it is the intra-vires, since the director honestly believed that the transaction could be advantageously carried on. Okay, so this case that you have here, you have to read this पेज नंबर, इसमें कितना आया, पेज नंबर 99. On the page number 99, the defendant will say that the agreement or agreement herein alleged by the plaintiff were at material time ultra-vires, the plaintiff company, and void in that, and under these memorandum of association has no power to enter into such agreement or agreement. So the defendant company is saying that this act is beyond the power of the Bell House Limited, and then there these clause 3 of the plaintiff here on the page number 101, you will find that memorandum. This I am doing the blue line, clause 3 of the plaintiff. This is very big, you will find many things related to it in different clauses. Yeah, this one. Okay, because thus this independent power that given to the director to do any business that is advantageous for the company and ancillary to the above businesses. So we have to see that whether that business the director have started of financing can be covered as any of the main clauses. And so here these the blue lines that I have done, so here you will find that paragraph M was referred, this paragraph M, to accept the payment of any property or right sold or otherwise disposed of. So I'm just bluing it, this paragraph. So this paragraph M was referred but does not add anything material for the present purposes. So the paragraph M was argued for that, and for that the second question was that whether it was profitable or not, how it has to be, or advantageous, how it has to be determined. The court has held that if bona fide director feel that this particular business that is is as connections or is the auxiliary or you can say ancillary to the main object or whatever written in the main object clause, then it would not seem that whether it actually turned to be the advantageous or not. The intention behind that has to be seen. And so here you will find at the last the result, it is on the page number 106, because this case runs in many pages, so this difficulty, this line from here I am reading on the page number 106, last para. The result of these authority, whatever different cases has discussed, in my opinion, is to establish that the clause on the line of subclause C in present case is able to make bona fide opinion of the director sufficient to decide whether an activity of the plaintiff company is intra-vires. There was in present case no resolution of the board of director expressing the opinion of the board, but I don't think that such resolution was necessary, and I do not understand that it was contended that the resolution was necessary. In fact, Mr. Bell managed the operation of the plaintiff company and exercised by delegation the function of the board of director as he was entitled to do by virtue of the resolution of the board of director passed on June 10, 1955. It was Mr. Bell's opinion which was decided whether certain business activities should be carried on behalf of the plaintiff company. Mr. Bell's opinion is evident from what he did and from his evidence. Further, the facts support his opinion. For the reason which I have mentioned earlier in this judgment, the transaction was justified and was within the power of the plaintiff company under the term of the clause 3C, that means object clause, and the position is also assisted by the term of subclause Q and the subclause U. I feel no doubt that the transaction with reference with the defendant was within the power of the company and was not ultra-vires. Uh, the result in the question whether the defense of ultra-vires could be raised by the defendant does not arise, as we do not have necessary to have argued. And so here, in this Bell House Limited versus City Wall Property, one another principle has emerged out, that whenever there is any clause in the object clause that gives the power to the directors to do any business or the trade that is advantageous in their opinion for the company, and that must be in connection or ancillary to the main objects. So this is not this particular clause in itself would not be the object, but this is the power. So there is the difference between the object and the power. Object clause is set out in the the main clauses, and then the power is given to the director, and this power has to be exercised within the scope of the object clause. Otherwise, if independently this power would be exercised, then it would create the problem. But uh, what about the advantageously and not advantageously? That is something that bona fide, if the director believes, so that would other thing would not be required. So this is the decision of the Bell House. From these two judgments we have learned two important thing about the object clause and the doctrine of ultra-vires. In from the first case in Ray John Beauforte, that if the act of the company is ultra-virus, then the company by any act cannot ratify it, maybe through the shareholders resolution, maybe through the consent decree, or by any other act that would not even be work as an estoppel. Okay. From the Bell House Limited versus City Wall Properties Limited, we have learned that in the object clause, the some provisions or the some portion is about the object and other is about the power. But the power always has to be exercised in light of the main object, and the power, whether that power has been has been exercised within the object or not, for that we have to see two things. One is that it must be with related to main object, and the second thing, it must be with the bona fide intention, then other thing is not required. So these two judgment we have discussed today.